Hello and welcome. This is Conversations with Dr. Stephen Greer. I'm Dr. Greer, and I'd like to thank the people at the World Puja Network for hosting us here every couple of weeks to bring you up to date on what we're doing at disclosureproject.org and CSETI.org, and also what we're doing with our film that is coming out, we hope, late winter or early spring. And it's at serious.neverendinglight.com if you want to learn more about this historic feature film that you, the people, have funded and that we're working on furiously as we close out the 2012 and enter 2013. And I'm excited to have a dear friend and a wonderful researcher who's been involved in studying UFOs for over 30 years with us today, and this is Paola Harris. And Paola, as many of you may recall, lived for years in Rome and has developed just amazing contacts throughout the European Union and really throughout the world on the subject, and has been doing excellent groundbreaking research and doing interviews with figures ranging from Colonel Philip Corso, who of course wrote the book The Day After Roswell, the day after, and then also with Paul Hellyer, the former Minister of Defense that I did the press conference with some years ago up in Canada, and many other figures, and she has really helped a lot with Disclosure Project, and actually set up our interview with a senior theologian at the Vatican, Monsignor Balducci, who gave us some wonderful interview prior to his passing, and that was also set up by Paola Harris, and so she's just been a fantastic resource for the whole world on this subject. So welcome, Paola.
Thank you. Happy New Year there, Steve.
Happy New Year, indeed. And to everyone, here we are in 2013. And yes, we survived 2012. There was no doubt. Of course, people, I say that tongue-in-cheek because we all knew that it's the closing of one era and the opening of another. And the era that's trying to emerge over the last 100 years or so is an era of disclosure and revealing the truth and beginning a new civilization that will be a universal, peaceful civilization. And that's what we're really at the core working for. And I'm very interested in what you shared with me privately that you can now share with all the listeners that here on the World Puja Network worldwide about what you have been doing in Europe recently and discovering. I think it's really amazing work you've been doing.
Well, I just came back from Europe. I went over for a conference on November 11th and came back on November 28th. And in the meantime, I had gone to the island of Sardinia, and what I was sharing with you was the sightings on the island of Sardinia and the hidden archaeology around the giants. What was shown to me were artifacts, bones, teeth of people that were 15 feet high, totally hidden archaeology, because the people that have seen this, because their farms or their land to have these tombs in it, have been told to keep quiet. So eventually all this will come out, Dr. Greer, because, I mean, the history of the planet needs to be rewritten correctly. And there's a lot of really courageous people on the island of Sardinia that want to do that. Plus, I shared with you some photos of a gentleman who saw a sighting over his property, and the photos are of 6 beings that were floating above the grass on his property, the 6 beings being the whatever was in the craft. And so I've got some information from Sardinia, which I will elaborate on if you want me to, but I think what you're pointing at was that out of the blue, I got a visit from Mario Borghesio in Turin, and while I was doing that conference, and he came with 2 bodyguards in a limousine, and he came to the hotel, and I don't know, I did not contact him. He somehow found out I was there, and he sat down and he said, "You need to help me," he said, "because I have tried to bring this question open in front of the economic community, and everyone thinks I'm crazy, and so he says, I need the real military witnesses, the real people, and I will, with your help, try to do something in 2013. Well, I gave him some materials, and also because of the help of the Russian gentleman that came out and talked about ETs being among us, Mario Borghesio called me on all my telephones, my landline, my cell phone, and so forth, and said because of the Russian testimony, he says even my detractors, the people on the left, because he's kind of right-wing, he says, are willing to help me now, he said. So he said, I have a lot of support because Russia is coming forth. So slowly, I think if we can't get it done here, we can get it done in Europe.
Well, what was that? Why don't you tell a little bit about who this person is, this Mario, and what?
Mario Borghesio, about 3 years ago, he's a parliamentarian from Italy. You know, they have representatives from all the economic community, and they're called parliamentarians.
EU. I'll just to be clear, because the listeners don't know. You're talking past a lot of detail. What I'm trying to get to, he represents people in Italy in the European Union Parliament.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
And he has a very strong interest in UFO disclosure, a dialogue. He said it was a dialogue.
Right.
And he said that a lot of people have interest, but when he began to be the only one, that he got a lot of flack. In other words, a lot of criticism in the press. Well,
no, this is what he needs is he needs to be armed with the 600-page disclosure book that has all the government documents that are the best throughout the world, as well as over almost 70 top-secret military witnesses' testimony transcript, which anyone can get at disclosureproject.org. It's also in a nearly 600-page briefing document that's embedded digitally in the 2-hour DVD that's also available at disclosureproject.org. And the executive summary that was given to the president is also in that DVD. And although it's not in print per se, because it's just a small executive summary. And the other thing is the Obama briefing, which we're about ready to digitize. After this film series comes out, I'm going to release the entirety in digital form of not just my letter for Obama, but the entire brief that was provided to him via John Podesta, who is, of course, the man who set up the Obama administration, so that people realize what is in the possession of the President of the United States for the last 3.5 years. And I think what he needs to be armed with as he goes to the European Parliament, and I'm certainly willing to help with this, is this kind of dispositive proof, evidence, testimony, documents, materials, etc. And that's really what he needs to have. And so, as I mentioned to you, I certainly would assist him in any way I can.
Yeah, I'd asked you that, Dr. Greer, because I think you have what they need. I mean, it's objective and very good testimony. They're witnesses that really they're telling the truth. They were involved. It's firsthand sources and all of this. So yeah, absolutely. Well, what we'll do is provide him with all of that. And he was asking me what we're doing here in the States. He was asking me what's happening here.
Right.
And of course, you can tell the listeners too of what we're trying to do here.
Right. Well, I think what we're finding is that the other countries around the world, ranging from Mexico and Denmark and Chile and Brazil, Uruguay, even France to an extent, and the UK, many have opened up many more files, whereas in the United States, of course, it's always been dead silence from the government, because people don't understand that because the United States military-industrial complex is the crown jewel on this issue in the world, it's also where there's the least openness and transparency, which has, of course, been very frustrating to the president and many other people. And what we have found is that it's counterintuitive that these smaller countries that have much smaller defense budgets and much smaller defense establishments are more able, such as Denmark or Uruguay or Brazil, to open up on this matter than in the United States, where there's no intact chain of command. And I remember some years ago there was, and you know about this gentleman, Paola, named astronaut Gordon Cooper, who has since unfortunately passed away. But astronaut Gordon Cooper was one of the early Mercury astronauts, and he had handled the film footage of one of these UFOs landing in broad daylight in 1956 on a dry lake bed in near what's now Edwards Air Force Base. And that was the process. He saw the footage. He was ordered to put it on a general's plane and fly it back to the Pentagon, which he did because he was a colonel at the time. And we have his testimony, by the way, Gordon Cooper's testimony. Now, when I did a presentation to a group in Washington some years ago, to the Federalist Society, which is a sort of a old and in a sense very conservative group of folks, but they were very interested in the subject. They had invited astronaut Gordon Cooper and myself to present at their gathering in Washington, and Gordon and I had a discussion, and this was during a period after the Clinton administration had left and the Bush administration was there in the 2000s. And he said to me, and I don't know if you know this story, Paula, but it's probably the first time I've ever shared it publicly, because it illustrates the point I'm going to get to in a moment. The astronaut told me, Gordon Cooper told me, that the Secretary of Defense for Bill Clinton, and of course, I had provided a briefing to the Clinton administration and to CIA Director Woolsey on all of this, as well as a number of other senior people. But the Secretary of Defense had asked Gordon Cooper personally to give him information about this landing case so that he, the Secretary of Defense, Cohen, could track it down and find the evidence and find this footage. So Gordon Cooper gave him all the full particulars, when, where, how, all the stuff. And the Secretary of Defense for the United States of America came back to Gordon Cooper and said, I can't find anything. It went into some black hole, and they were just all telling me that no one knows where it is, and it's disappeared into some other black project. And so even the Secretary of Defense, with actionable intelligence, which is the buzzword in the intelligence and military sphere, could not obtain so much as the footage that was processed by an astronaut who personally handled it and vouched for it and gave all the full particulars to this Secretary of Defense. This is how dysfunctional and unconstitutional this situation is in the United States of America. Now, that's just one of 100 examples like that I could give. And that was a very, very difficult thing for people in Europe to understand. As you know, a couple of years ago, we received a French delegation of intelligence and Air Force people in Washington, who I hosted first at our place, my home in Washington. Then we brought them out to our farm here in Virginia. And we had a little retreat because they were very interested in learning about all of this from the American side. And, of course, until recently, President Sarkozy, who was the president of France, was very actually interested in all of this. And an admiral who did all the briefings for him on these sort of issues had reached out to us. And so what we did was put together a team. Our commander, Will Miller, who has set up my meetings for the Defense Intelligence Agency director, the 3-star General Patrick Hughes, and the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff and others. And we had these people here at my home, and when we started explaining how the U.S. chain of command doesn't work on this subject, that it's been decapitated and has been decapitated since October of 1954, so that the President and the Secretary of Defense and senior members of Congress and even very senior generals that we have briefed are completely beguiled and befuddled because they cannot penetrate the secrecy, even when they have actionable intelligence. For example, when I gave Admiral Tom Wilson a document that I've also provided to President Obama that actually has the project code names and code numbers, not from the 40s or 50s, but from the 1990s. Even with that information, he was able to identify one secret project, Paula, but he was not able to get information from that project because when he contacted them, now imagine this is an